You know the thing about money? It doesn't lie. People lie. Smiles lie. I love you lies. But a bank statement tells you exactly who someone is and exactly what they think of you. My name is Maya. I'm 31 years old. And for 6 years, I was the invisible engine that kept my family running. Not the favorite daughter that was my older sister. Brooke. Not the fun one. Not the pretty one. Not the one my mother called first when something good happened. I was the one she called when something needed to be paid for. I did it because I loved them. I did it because I thought that was what love looked like. I did it because every single time I helped, my mother would squeeze my hand and say, "Maya, I don't know what we'd do without you." And for a few seconds, that felt like enough. The night everything changed. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of water that had gone warm, staring at a text message from my mother that read, "We need you to be at Brooke's engagement party on Saturday. And we need you to apologize to her before you arrive. If you can't do that, don't bother coming at all. Apologize." For what? Exactly. For telling the truth. 3 weeks earlier, Brooke had announced her engagement at a family dinner, a dinner I had quietly paid for, as I had paid for most family dinners over the past several years. Her fiancé, a guy named Trevor, had asked how Brooke had managed to furnish her entire apartment so beautifully on a part-time marketing coordinator salary. And I made the mistake of being honest. I said something like, "Oh, she had a lot of help." I didn't name myself. I didn't make a scene. I just told the truth in 4 words. Brooke didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. My mother left me a voicemail, calling me jealous and bitter. My father, who had never been good at standing up for anyone, said nothing at all. Now they wanted an apology. An apology for a 4-word sentence that wasn't even a full accusation. They wanted me to walk into that engagement party with my head down and my mouth shut, the way I always had, so that everything could continue exactly as it had been. I set my phone down on the table and looked around my small apartment, the one I had been meaning to repaint for 2 years. The one I'd never quite gotten around to decorating because there was always something else. Always someone else's emergency that came first. The couch I'd had since college, because the nice one I'd been saving for kept getting postponed. The kitchen I loved but rarely cooked in because I was always tired. And then something shifted. Not loudly, not with tears or shouting. It was quiet. Like a door closing softly in a room you've been trying to leave for years. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. I want to tell you exactly what I had been paying for, because I need you to understand that this wasn't a few small favors. This was a second household. It started 5 years ago when my parents told me their mortgage payment had gone up after a refinance, and they were short $200 a month. Just $200. They said. Just until things settled. I was 26, and I had just gotten my first real job as a staff accountant. And I said yes, because $200 felt manageable, and they were my parents. Things never settled. 200 became 3. 3 became covering their car insurance when my father's premium went up. Car insurance became my mother's medical bills after she had a minor procedure, and the insurance gap left them with an out-of-pocket amount they couldn't handle. The out-of-pocket amount was almost $5,000. And I paid it without a signed agreement because she was my mother and she had just been in the hospital, and who asks their mother to sign a loan document? Then there was Brooke. Brooke had been chasing a lifestyle she had not earned since the day she turned 25 and decided that aesthetics were a personality. She wanted the apartment in the good part of town, the wardrobe that photographed well, the dinners that showed up nicely on her stories. She had a habit of running her credit cards to the limit and then calling me in a panic 2 weeks before the payment was due. It was never a request. It was always a crisis, and I was always the solution. I paid off her first credit card entirely $4,300 because she told me she was drowning and she cried on the phone for 40 minutes and said she would pay me back within a year. She did not pay me back within a year. She did not pay me back at all. I paid portions of her rent 3 separate times when her roommate situation fell through. I covered a car repair when she told me she needed her car for work. I sent her money for a security deposit on her new apartment, the beautifully furnished one that had impressed Trevor so much at that dinner. When I sat down that night with my banking app and a spreadsheet I had been quietly maintaining for 2 years because I am an accountant. And accountants document things even when they wish they didn't have to. The total came to $41,600. Not loans. Gifts. Technically, because I had never once asked for a signature. I stared at that number for a long time. Then I thought about the engagement party on Saturday. And the apology they expected. And my mother's text message sitting there on my phone like a summons. I opened a new browser tab and searched for flights to Colorado. My college roommate, Jess, had been asking me to visit for almost a year. She lived in Denver now, in a house with a porch that looked out over the foothills. And every time she called, she said the same thing, "Maya, you need to get out of your own head. Come stay with me." I had always said soon. Maybe. I'll check my calendar. I had never once booked a flight. I booked one that night. A one-way ticket on a flight leaving Friday morning. 2 days before the engagement party. I paid for it without hesitating. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, spending money felt like freedom instead of obligation. Then I went back to my banking app. My parents had a joint account that I had been set up as an authorized contributor on years ago, originally, so I could easily transfer that $200 a month. I was not a joint account holder. I had no authority over their account. But I was the one making the automatic transfers that kept them comfortable. And I had the ability to stop them. I canceled every automatic transfer I had set up. Every single one. The monthly contribution to their household expenses. The subscription I'd been paying because my mother liked a particular streaming service and had added it to my card without asking. The automatic top-up I had set up on Brooke's phone plan, yes. I had been paying for her phone line for 2 years. Quietly. Without ever making it a conversation. Because the one time I mentioned it, she made me feel like I was keeping score. I removed Brooke from my phone plan entirely. I went through my credit card statements and identified every recurring charge that belonged to someone else. There were 4 of them. I canceled or removed my card from each one. It took me 45 minutes. The apartment was very quiet the entire time. When I was finished, I closed my laptop and sat in the silence, and thought this is what it feels like to stop bleeding. I went to bed at midnight. I slept better than I had in months. I landed in Denver on a Friday afternoon with 1 carry-on bag and the specific lightness of someone who has left something heavy behind. Jess was waiting at baggage claim, even though I didn't have checked luggage. Because that is the kind of person Jess is. And when she hugged me, she said, "You look exhausted, but also like you just made a decision." And I laughed for the first time, in what felt like weeks. Her house was warm and cluttered in the comfortable way that means someone actually lives there. She had a dog named Pickle, who immediately sat on my feet. She made pasta for dinner, and opened a bottle of wine she'd been saving for a special occasion, and said this counted. I told her everything. Not in the way I usually told people things, minimizing. Making excuses for my family. Making sure the story didn't make me sound too sad or too stupid. I told her all of it. The $41,000. The credit cards. The phone plan. The engagement party and the apology demand. The text message from my mother that I still hadn't answered. Jess was quiet for a moment after I finished. Then she said, How long have you known that this was what it was I thought about it? A while, I said. I just didn't have a word for it. It's financial exploitation, she said. Simply. The way you say a word you've known for a long time, and you didn't do anything wrong by stopping. The call started Saturday morning. I had left my phone on Jess's kitchen counter when I went to bed Friday night. And I didn't check it until after I'd had coffee and watched Pickle chase a squirrel across the yard. When I picked it up, there were 11 missed calls. 6 from my mother. 3 from Brooke. 2 from a number I didn't recognize. My mother's first voicemail, Maya. Call me back right away. Something happened with my account. Confused. Not yet angry. Her third voicemail. 4 hours later, I know you did something. Call me back immediately. This is not the time for this. Brooke's party is today, and I need you to act like an adult. Brooke's first text. My phone says my line was removed from the plan. What is going on? Not a question mark. Just a statement. The kind you make when you already know the answer and you're deciding how angry to be. Her second text. 20 minutes later. Are you serious right now? My card was declined. Fix this. Her third text. You're doing this on purpose. You're trying to ruin my engagement party because you're jealous. You have always been jealous of me, and now you're showing your true colors. Trevor's family is here, and I look like a complete idiot. I read through all of them on Jess's porch with my coffee going cold in my hands. The foothills were golden in the morning light. Pickle had found something interesting under the porch railing, and was investigating it with great seriousness. I didn't feel guilty. That surprised me. I had expected guilt. It had been my companion for so long that I'd stopped noticing its weight. But sitting on that porch in Denver, reading messages that were designed to make me feel small, I just felt clear. Like a window that had finally been cleaned, I put the phone face down on the porch railing and watched the mountains. The number of missed calls by Saturday evening was 34. I spent Sunday hiking with Jess on a trail that wound up through pine trees to a ridge where you could see 3 mountain ranges at once. My legs ached in a good way. My phone stayed in my backpack. At the top of the ridge, I sat on a flat rock and ate trail mix, and thought about nothing complicated for almost 20 minutes, which was the longest I had managed in years. On Monday, I called my friend Daniel. Daniel and I had gone to the same accounting program in college, and he had gone into corporate law afterward, which had seemed like a strange pivot at the time, and now seemed like extraordinary foresight. He was one of the most methodical people I knew. The kind who thought 3 moves ahead in every conversation. I had texted him over the weekend to give him the short version, and he had responded, "Call me Monday. I want to hear all of it." I told him everything, including the spreadsheet. "You kept records," he said. "I'm an accountant." I said, "I keep records of everything." There was a pause. And then Daniel made a sound like someone setting down a glass very deliberately. "Maya, that spreadsheet is important. They cannot come after you legally. The money you gave them was a gift. You had no written loan agreement. No promissory note. Nothing enforceable. And canceling automatic transfers you set up on your own accounts is completely within your rights. You haven't touched anything that belongs to them. You've just stopped giving. My mother keeps saying she's going to get a lawyer. She's not going to get a lawyer," he said. "She's saying that because it's the only threat she has left. If she did get a lawyer, the first thing that lawyer would do is tell her she has no case." He paused. "I'll send you some information in case they escalate. But Maya, you're clean. You haven't done anything wrong." I exhaled slowly. "I've been waiting for someone to tell me that." "You already knew it," he said. The text came on Tuesday afternoon. While I was sitting on Jess's back porch watching Pickle attempt to dig a hole to somewhere better, it wasn't from my mother or Brooke. It was from a number I didn't have saved. But the message identified the sender immediately. "Hi, Maya. This is Lauren, Brooke's friend. We met at her birthday last year. I'm sorry to reach out like this, but I thought you should know what's being said." I wrote back, "What's being said?" Lauren's response came in pieces. "The way people type when they're nervous." She told me that at the engagement party, after I hadn't shown up, and after Brooke's phone stopped working, and after someone noticed her card was declined at the bar, the story that circulated was this: Maya had always been unstable. Maya had never been able to handle Brooke's success. Maya had fabricated a fantasy in her own head that she had been supporting the family because she was delusional and jealous. And now she had done something vindictive and childish to try to ruin the most important day of Brooke's life. My mother had told Trevor's mother, personally, that I had a history of attention-seeking behavior and that the family had been managing it for years. I sat with that for a moment. The audacity of it was almost impressive. They had flipped the entire narrative. I was not the person who had given $41,000 over 5 years. I was the unhinged sister who had invented the whole thing to cope with her jealousy. And if I never said anything, that story would just become the truth. I texted Lauren back, "Thank you for telling me. I'm going to handle this." Then I opened my contacts and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was cold and controlled in the way that meant she had been preparing for this call. "Finally," she said, "I heard what you told Trevor's family." I said, "A pause." I told them the truth. "No," I said, "you told them a story. I have a different one. And mine comes with documentation." I kept my voice even. I had been an accountant for 5 years. I knew how to deliver numbers without flinching. $41,600. Mom, I have every transfer, every receipt, every canceled payment. I have emails where you ask me for money. I have texts from Brooke saying she'd pay me back. I have all of it, organized by year. With notes. Silence. "I'm coming home on Thursday," I said, "and I'm going to Trevor's family dinner on Friday. Because he deserves to know what kind of financial situation he's marrying into. I'm not going to embarrass anyone. I'm just going to tell the truth. You can decide between now and then whether you'd like to get ahead of it or not." My mother's voice, when it came, had changed. The cold control was still there, but something underneath it had cracked slightly. "You wouldn't do that. I wouldn't have done a lot of things," I said. "But I've changed my mind about some of them." I hung up. Jess was standing in the doorway when I turned around. She had clearly heard at least part of the conversation. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, and then she said, "Do you want more coffee?" "Yes," I said. "I really do." I flew home Thursday morning. The flight back felt nothing like the flight out. Going to Denver. I had been running not away. Exactly. But toward something. Toward air and distance. And a friend who would let me be honest. Coming home. I was walking back in on my own terms. I spent Thursday evening ironing a blazer and printing out a document. The document was 62 pages, every transfer, every receipt, every relevant email and text message, organized chronologically, with a summary page at the front that laid out the total clearly. $41,600. The Brooks family account. I titled it. And then I decided that was too dramatic and retitled it simply, Financial Summary. 2019-2024. Daniel had reviewed it. This is the most organized evidence I've seen outside of a courtroom. he said. This is the work of someone who knew, on some level, that this day might come. Maybe I had known. Maybe the part of me that documented everything had been waiting for permission to use it. Trevor's family dinner was at a restaurant. His parents had chosen a nice Italian place in the suburbs, the kind with candles on the tables and a prix fixe menu on weekends. I arrived 10 minutes after the reservation time. After everyone was seated, because I wanted to walk in rather than be there when people arrived. The table went quiet when I appeared at the entrance. Brooke saw me first. Her face did something complicated. Panic. Fury. And something that might have been buried very deep. Guilt. Trevor's mother, a composed woman named Patricia, looked up with polite confusion. My mother's hand tightened around her wine glass. I walked over to the table. I said good evening to everyone. I apologized for being late. Trevor's parents, who didn't know me well enough to know what was happening, were gracious. I sat in the empty chair across from Brooke. The dinner proceeded. It was uncomfortable in the way that a room is uncomfortable when everyone is aware of something that isn't being said. Brooke barely spoke. My mother talked too much. Too brightly. About the venue and the flowers and the catering options for the reception. At the end of the meal, when Trevor's father was signing the check, I opened my bag and placed the folder on the table. It was plain. Navy blue. Not dramatic. I slid it across to Trevor. Before you two get married, I said, I think you should understand the financial picture you're inheriting. Not to cause problems. Just so you can go in with clear eyes. I looked at Brooke. That seemed fair to me. Trevor looked at the folder. He looked at Brooke. Brooke was very still. His mother said, What is this? It's a summary. I said, of the financial support I provided to Brooke and our parents over the past 5 years. The total is $41,600. It's all documented. Trevor opened the folder. He looked at the summary page. His expression was very careful and very quiet. The way someone looks when they are absorbing something they already half suspected. Brooke, he said. Not loudly. Just her name. Brooke pushed her chair back. This is exactly what I told you about, she said. Her voice was tight. This is what she does. She makes everything about her. She couldn't stand that tonight was about us. Your card was declined at your own engagement party, Trevor said. Still quiet. You told me that was a bank error. It says here you had a credit card balance of $4,000 paid off for you in 2021. He turned a page. And a security deposit in 2022? Another page. And phone plan coverage through. He stopped. He closed the folder. How long has this been going on? The table was silent. Patricia reached over and very gently took the folder from her son. She opened it to the summary page and read it for a moment. And when she looked up, she looked at me. Did you come here to cause trouble? She asked. Directly. Without hostility. No. I said. I came here because I know what it looks like when someone builds a life on a foundation that can collapse. I've been the foundation. I'm not anymore. That's information he needs. Trevor stood up. He said he needed some air. He walked out of the restaurant with the folder under his arm. And Brooke stood up and went after him. And my mother sat at the table with her hands folded and her face very white. My father, who had been silent through the entire dinner, the way he was silent through everything, looked at me for a long moment. You didn't have to do it like this, he said. I know. I said, but I'd been waiting for a different way for 6 years. And it never came. I said goodnight to Trevor's parents. His mother shook my hand. his father said. With what seemed like genuine meaning, "I'm sorry for what you've been carrying." I thanked them and left. Outside, the air was cool and smelled like rain that hadn't arrived yet. I walked to my car and sat in it for a few minutes without starting it. Watching the streetlights come on one by one, my phone buzzed. A text from Brooke: "You ruined everything. I hope you're happy." I turned my phone over and put it in the cup holder. I was not happy. Exactly. But I was something better than happy. I was finished. The weeks that followed were stranger than I expected. Not harder, easier. In most ways, but strange. The phone was quiet. My mother did not call. Brooke did not call. The silence felt, at first, like the aftermath of something violent. And then, slowly, it began to feel like space. I repainted my apartment, a warm terracotta in the living room, which I had wanted for 2 years. I bought the couch I had been postponing. I took myself out to dinner one Friday evening. To a nice restaurant. Alone. And ordered what I wanted without calculating whether I could afford it. Because I could afford it. And I had always been able to afford it. The money I had been spending was just going elsewhere. Daniel checked in every week or two. He told me Trevor had ended the engagement, which I had not been trying to cause, and which I felt complicated about. I had not wanted to destroy a relationship. I had wanted to tell a truth. Those things sometimes had the same outcome, and I was working on being at peace with that. Jess came to visit in October. She stayed for a long weekend, and we went to a farmer's market and watched a movie on my new couch, and she said, "You look different. Different how like you're actually here." She said, "Like you're in your own life." I thought about that for a while after she left. In November, I got a voicemail from my aunt, my father's older sister, Carol, who lived 2 states away and who I had never been particularly close to, but who had always been kind to me in the distant, occasional way of family members who are present without being central. She said she had heard some things from different directions, and she wanted to talk. If I was open to it, I called her back. She had known. She told me, for a long time, that something wasn't right. She said she had watched me become quieter and more stretched over the years, and she hadn't known what to do with what she was seeing. And she was sorry she hadn't done more sooner. "You didn't owe me anything," I said. "No," she said. "But I'm family. And family isn't supposed to just watch." We talked for almost 2 hours. When I hung up, I sat in my terracotta-colored living room on my new couch and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time in relation to the word family, something that wasn't dread or exhaustion, something closer to warmth. In January, my father called. I almost didn't answer. Then I thought about the man who had sat across from me at that dinner table, who had watched everything unfold, with his hands folded and his face very still. And I thought, he is not a villain. He is something more complicated and harder to be angry at. He is a person who had choices and made the easier ones for a very long time. I answered. He didn't ask me for anything. He said, "I've been thinking about what you said. That you waited for a different way for 6 years and it never came." His voice sounded older than I remembered. "I should have given you a different way. A long time ago. I'm sorry that I didn't say it was fine. Because it wasn't. Entirely. I didn't say it didn't matter. Because it did." I said, "I know." Which was the truest thing I had. We talked for a few minutes. We didn't make any plans. We didn't pretend that a phone call undid 5 years. But we talked. And when I hung up, the weight I had been carrying, not the $41,000, but the other weight, the one that is just grief. The grief of a family that could have been different, felt slightly less total. I'm telling you this now from a coffee shop, 2 blocks from my office. It's a Thursday morning in early spring, and I'm in my final quarter of studying for my CPA exam, which I had been putting off for 3 years because there was always something else. Always someone else's crisis that felt more urgent than my own goals. I started the application in September. On a slow afternoon when the apartment was quiet and the light was good. I submitted it in November. I have a study schedule taped to my refrigerator, and I am, for the first time in a long time, doing something that is entirely, completely, uncomplicatedly for me. I am not the ATM anymore. I am not the foundation. I am not the quiet one who steps up. The responsible one, who never asks for anything back. The sister who is useful rather than loved. Oh, Ammaya. I am 31 years old. I have a couch I like, and a wall I painted the color I wanted, and a spreadsheet I no longer need to update. I have a friend in Denver, and an aunt in Michigan, and a lawyer who checks in on me, and a CPA exam to pass. If you have ever been the one in your family who keeps the lights on, and the bills paid, and everyone else afloat, if you have ever paid for a life that wasn't yours to pay for, and smiled while you did it, and told yourself it was love, I want you to hear this. It is not love if they never ask whether you can afford it. It is not family if it only works when you are giving. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to cancel the transfers. Close the accounts. Walk out the door with your own money and your own life and your own future intact. You are not abandoning them. You are returning to yourself. Those are not the same thing. Even though it will feel like it for a while. Don't forget to share this if it hit close to home. And if you're in the middle of your own version of this story, if you're sitting at a kitchen table right now looking at a bank statement and feeling the first cold edge of clarity, I hope you'll find the same thing I found. When I finally stopped, I hope you'll find that the silence, once you get used to it, sounds a lot like freedom.